The internet is, dare I say, ablaze with the Blake Lively so-called supposed sham subpoena, and I have a few things to add. Okay, so this Daily Mail article pretty much, nope, not that. Okay, so this Daily Mail article right here came out yesterday. It is making headlines, making waves. A few days ago, I guess a week ago, maybe less, some of these AstroTurf accounts that really just popped up out of nowhere started talking about Blake Lively and started getting hundreds of thousands of views and only talk about Blake Lively. They started reporting about this subpoena. Okay, they started reporting, and it wasn't long after that they had Candace Owens reporting on it. They had Popcorn Play. Everybody was talking about it. And what the issue was at one point was, all right, so this Blake Lively Justin Baldoni lawsuit is all really based on these text messages, the text messages that were on Jennifer Abel's phone that Stephanie Jones, the PR publicist, whatever, got off of Jennifer Abel's phone and then eventually turned over to Blake Lively. Well, the question from the AstroTurf accounts for a while, for a couple days that I remember, was, is that subpoena even real? Stephanie Jones said that Blake Lively subpoenaed her, but actually now that we're looking at it, the timeline doesn't really add up. And there's been all these filings back and forth. I mean, literally hundreds of legal filings from state courts, federal courts, and everywhere in between. And not one person yet has filed this so-called alleged subpoena. So is it even real? I mean, that was the question. Well, quickly, like within a day or two of that question being astroturfed onto the scene, people started realizing nobody ever saw that subpoena. Now, I could have sworn, I guess I had a false memory, because I could have sworn that I saw that subpoena before, or just maybe I just assumed that it must be in there. But apparently it's not. And I was not able to find it when I did go look for it. So I guess, maybe I haven't seen that subpoena. And in fact and indeed, now we have Justin Baldoni's lawyer saying he never saw a subpoena. At least he's being quoted as having said that in the news media and things. So the question going around is, all right, is there a subpoena at all? Does one exist? Where is it? If so, the timeline is not adding up, because Stephanie Jones had said that she had gotten a subpoena on October 1st, but this lawsuit wasn't filed until December. So who was subpoenaing her in October, if it's real? These are the questions going around. Well, then just yesterday, we have Daily Mail claiming to be exclusively reporting. Now, I have watched a few YouTube videos on this now, and apparently Daily Mail was not the first to report on this. The first to report on this was a YouTuber. Okay, put some respect on YouTubers' names, okay? First to report on this, I'm hearing, was actually Katie Joy from Beyond a Crystal Ball. Without a crystal ball, sorry, excuse me. Whoever it was, both Katie Joy and the Daily Mail on these new allegations are that, all right, the subpoena's real, y'all. It was real, but it wasn't much better than fake, because people are calling this thing a sham, a scheme. A scheme. We got lawyers licensed to practice law on the scene, going on the record with their names and their full chest saying this was a scheme, a ploy. So Daily Mail claims to have found the lawsuit where the subpoena came from. And indeed, it didn't come from this lawsuit, the Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively progeny and its brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and children and progeny. No, it came from a different lawsuit. Okay, so here's the Daily Mail article. Revealed. Blake Lively's super shady legal tactic that set off war with Justin Baldoni before he even had a clue. Okay. Blake Lively, the Daily Mail says, quietly filed a clandestine lawsuit months before her legal war with It Ends With Us co-star Justin Baldoni became public, in an apparent plot to seize damning text messages from his publicist. The filing allowed her attorneys to issue a subpoena. Okay, so the fact that this lawsuit was filed at all, we're going to look at that lawsuit. But there was an underlying lawsuit, a secret clandestine lawsuit. Apparently, allegedly, according to the Daily Mail, and this clandestine lawsuit was filed by Blake Lively. Look, Blake Lively, this is what the Daily Mail is saying. I'm reading from the Daily Mail article from the website right now. Today is Saturday, April 19th. Okay, I'm reading. Blake Lively is what they are saying. Quietly filed this lawsuit months before her battle with Justin Baldoni became public. Now, why did she do this? Well, according to the Daily Mail, it was an apparent plot to seize damning text messages from Justin Baldoni's publicist. They say a Daily Mail investigation has uncovered a super shady secret plot. I want to scroll and let y'all take a look at the. Okay, so they attached the summons and pictures of the complaint. So I'm going to pull it up. Okay, I'm going to pull it up. I want to show y'all some stuff in it. A copy of the subpoena itself, importantly, has not been made public, but the Daily Mail alleges that they claim they over there at Daily Mail have seen a copy of the subpoena itself. I have not. But what I do have here, and what is a public record, is this lawsuit, the one they just talked about. Okay, so I want to pull it up. There's a lot of other videos out on the internet about this, but what I'm noticing is there's a large gap. Okay, might not even seem like a gap to y'all, but it's an issue I see, and I want to point it out before anybody gets in trouble for saying something, getting sued for defamation, etc. You know what I mean? Here is that lawsuit. It is only 11 pages long. Now, first things first, there's only been 2 things filed in the whole entire case. This is one. The next thing was filed in December, the 19th, I believe, and it was a motion for voluntary dismissal without prejudice, which means they reserved the right to bring the lawsuit again, but they voluntarily dismissed it. Who was they? Van Zandt Inc. All right, so before we look at any business filings that say Blake Reynolds on them, before we look at anything else, let's look at the lawsuit. Okay, this is what we have to start at. This lawsuit, it appears according to my reading and understanding of the Daily Mail article that Blake Lively's lawyer has admitted to the Daily Mail that yes, this lawsuit we are looking at here was filed for the purpose of uncovering or unearthing the identities of the individuals who may have been conspiring or scheming against Blake Lively. So it appears, according to the attributed citation in the Daily Mail, that they have gone ahead and fessed up and taken credit for this lawsuit. But there's some interesting stuff creeping about in the paperwork that I just want to show y'all. Okay, so this is a lawsuit filed on September 27, 2024. And it says Van Zandt Inc. versus Doe's 1 through 10. Okay, and this is the lawsuit that apparently is what resulted in Stephanie Jones giving over those text messages. This is 3 months before Blake Lively does that CRD complaint, before anybody's getting sued, before the New York Times publishes anything, before they even started working together with the New York Times, because that allegedly started in October. Okay, so this is all the way back in September last year. And it says this action arises out of an ongoing campaign to damage plaintiff's business and plaintiff's reputation. Who is plaintiff? Well, it's this company called Van Zandt. Upon information belief, the Doe defendants, look, they don't even name anybody. Nobody. Just who could it possibly be? The Doe defendants have certain contractual and confidentiality obligations and obligations of good faith and loyalty to plaintiff, that's Van Zandt, regarding plaintiff's business and reputation by way of oral promises, written agreements. And what are the allegations? I mean, it is a little bit vague. Failing to act in plaintiff's best interests, taking actions to their personal benefit at plaintiff's expense, failing to freely communicate with plaintiff regarding matters that impact plaintiff's business and reputation, and disclosing to third parties and failing to keep strictly confidential plaintiff's confidential and or private information. This is a breach of some type of agreement or obligation. And so what it looks like to me is Blake Lively and them were trying to go on a fishing expedition. Okay, if this is to be believed that this is really their company, because if you look at the face of the document itself, it doesn't say anything at all about Blake Lively. What it says is the plaintiff is a New York corporation with its principal place of business in New York, New York. Okay. Upon information and belief, we think the does, the defendants, are employees, contractors, agents, or representatives of plaintiffs. So this plaintiff, a New York corporation, is saying that its own employees, contractors, agents, and or representatives are breaching contracts that they're owed. They're supposed to be loyal to the plaintiff, but they're out here smearing and maybe scheming or whatever. But this to me just kind of looks like a fishing expedition. They're just like, okay, let's get those text messages somehow, some way. And we already know from the lawsuit, at least, according to what the lawsuit is looking like, that it was as early as August that Stephanie Jones had acquired the text messages from her former employee, Jennifer Abel's phone. I did make a web for this. Okay, so here's the Blake Lively web. If you've watched any of my videos in the series, you're probably familiar with this one. Okay, so here's Stephanie Jones. Okay, Stephanie Jones. This lady right here, Jennifer Abel, this is the one where the text messages were on her phone, okay? The text messages, the ones we saw, the ones that got, quote, leaked. No, it wasn't leaked. It was a subpoena, whatever. It was on this lady right here's phone, okay? This lady. Now, how did they get them off her phone? This was her boss, Stephanie Jones. That was her boss, all right? Jones Works. Now, Blake subpoenas this one, right? But until like yesterday, we never even knew if that subpoena was real. But apparently yesterday, Daily Mail reported, yes, the subpoena is real, okay? So the text messages off this one's right here's phone, procured by her. It was in August that she got them, is what's being alleged, because it was in August. They all still were, working together, and then they had their falling outs, all right? So down here, I have like this little lawsuit web, okay? The phantom subpoena. It's from this document right here, right? September 2024. We just looked at it. That's what we were just looking at. And as we just saw, the plaintiff was named as a New York corporation with a principal place of business in New York. Okay. Now, a lot of people I'm seeing are citing this California business filing in relation with Van Zandt Company, and it says Blake Reynolds on it. So let me pull that up. Even Daily Mail did cite this. Okay, so as you can see, this is a State of California Office Secretary of State business filing for the Van Zandt Incorporated. Now, it is listed as a Delaware company. That is important. We will get to that in a moment. This is a foreign entity statement of information filing. Now, this is filed in California, but the officer address, Blake Reynolds, which, Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds' last name, so Blake Reynolds would be the married name. The officer is in New York, okay? The mailing address of the business is in New York, and the principal place of business is in New York. But what did that lawsuit we just looked at say? A New York corporation with a principal place of business in New York. What we are looking at here is a Delaware corporation with a principal place of business in New York City. Okay, so this is not the company. Listen to me one more time again. This cannot be the company that is suing, was suing those Jane Does, John Does, whoever it was, and dropped the lawsuit. The one that got the subpoena. It is not this company. Okay? It's not this company. This is a Delaware corporation with a New York principal place of business. But there is a company called Van Zandt Incorporated, which is a New York corporation with a New York principal place of business. So let me pull that up. Now, many people were saying these are the same company because California just makes people put their names out publicly, and that's why we were able to get it, but it's the same company. I am going to say y'all need to be careful about that, including people over there at the Daily Mail. There is a saving grace here, and that is that Blake Lively's lawyer appears to have gone ahead and taken credit for Blake Lively having filed it. So maybe it's just fine. As a refresher, the lawsuit itself, Van Zandt Incorporated versus Jane Doe, John Doe's, whatever, 1 through 10. It got voluntarily withdrawn, dismissed now. The plaintiff, Van Zandt, is a New York corporation with principal place of business located in New York, New York. Okay, this is not nitpicky just for fun. This is nitpicky because it matters. It matters. The plaintiff who's actually suing matters. Because other than Daily Mail reporting, I'm not able to confirm on the public record that these are the same company. And actually, in fact, it looks like they are not. Let me pull up the New York one now. Okay, this is what you get when you search Van Zandt in New York in the public business entity filing search. Van Zandt Properties, Van Zandt Services, Van Zandt Inc., and Van Zandt Construction. Okay, so 2 Van Zandt Incs. But we are looking for the plaintiff in this particular lawsuit. And what was it described as? A New York corporation with a principal place of business in New York City. That's this. Before we even click on it, what does it say the date of the first filing of this entity was? 2019. But those other Van Zandt filings from California say that the business was incorporated there as a foreign entity or a branch of a Delaware corporation were filed in 2010. So how could it be that it's a New York corporation from 2019 and it somehow is the same as the Delaware corporation from 2007, which was incorporated as a foreign entity in California in 2010? It's not adding up because it's not the same company. On top of the fact, this is listed as a domestic business corporation. Look at that, domestic. That means not foreign. Foreign as in if you have a Delaware company and you want that same company, let's say it's Walmart. They're based in Arkansas. Let's say it's Bird Leaf Tree Incorporated. Let's say you want Bird Leaf Tree Incorporated. You're a Delaware, you have a Delaware corporation. You want that same exact corporation, that same business to be able to do business in California. You have to register the business to do business in California so that you're following the law. Every state you want to do a substantial amount of business or whatever. And I mean, listen, this isn't legal advice. It's just kind of a primer. You have to register in each state where you're going to do business, but you're still a Delaware corporation. Let's say you want to start your business in New Jersey, but you want to do business in California too, and you're going to have a satellite over there. But you're still in New Jersey, still based in New Jersey. If you get sued, you want to get sued in New Jersey. You might live in New Jersey. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so when you go through the process of setting that business up in another state after you already established it in, say, Delaware or New Jersey, what you would be doing is registering what is called a foreign entity. But if you just want to start the business in the state where you're at, let's say you live in New Jersey, you want to start your business in New Jersey, you're only going to do business in New Jersey, then you would be what's called a domestic corporation, or LLC if you do a limited liability company. But what we're looking at here, the only qualifier who could possibly be the plaintiff in this lawsuit, the New York corporation with the New York principal place of business, is a domestic business corporation in New York. So it is impossible to me that it is the same exact business. Now, could it have the same officers and employees? I guess so. But let's look at the page and see what more information we can get when we actually click on it. Because we just got all that information before we ever even clicked. Now, there's a whole nother Van Zandt Inc. We can get into a whole side rabbit hole on and with. I'm not doing it. From the Broome County, 1992. But that one's inactive. I don't have time to get into that one today. What I'm going to go to is the one that appears to be probably the plaintiff in this lawsuit, which is now dismissed, voluntarily withdrawn, which apparently originated all the text messages, which let the Pandora out of the box or whatever. Let's click on that. Okay. Now, there is one irregularity here, which comes into play when we get back to the web. Do you see how you can click on these different tabs right here? This one says entity display. This one says name history, filing history, merger history, and assumed name history. We can click on these. Entity display, this is kind of the home page. Name history, it appears that there is no name change history. The name has always been Van Zandt Inc. for the last 6 years. It was incorporated in New York in 2019. Filing history, we only get one filing, one ever. And then if you do look up here, it is past due on its filings. It does appear on this page that the status, the entity status, still does remain, quote, active. So I don't know why. It may be somewhere else that it's listed as, defunct or something. It does appear that the statements are past due. The next statement, it was due in 2021 and we're in 2025 right now. So it's over 4 years overdue. People saying, like, how are they able to file a lawsuit? Well, that's because what y'all were looking at, I think this is what's going on, is that although there are 2 companies that are called Van Zandt Inc., and although they may both be associated and affiliated somehow with maybe Ryan Reynolds or Blake Lively, It does not appear to me that the California filing that says Blake's actual name on it is the actual plaintiff in this case. It actually appears to me that this is possibly a related entity, which was established in New York State under the laws of the state of New York as a business corporation of some sort in 2019. So, separate business, it looks like. It looks like it's two separate Van Zandt Inc. But the reason that I say that they actually still both may be associated with Ryan Reynolds and or Blake Lively is the following. You don't get a lot of information from the New York Secretary of State website, relative to what you would get for California. California is robust and more transparent. You get some things like the names of the officers, like Blake Reynolds put her name on there. But in New York, you don't get quite as much of that. You get a little bit of hints here and there, like, domestic, when was filed, what was filed. But I wanted to just point out too quickly, I forgot to do this, circle back. Do y'all see how I can't click on the merger history? Like, even here, assumed name history, where there's no result, right? But it tells me that. It allows me to click on it, and there's some type of field populated, like, NA. It doesn't, no, this isn't, there is nothing. Entity display, name history. It's just, the one thing filed. Filing history, the one thing filed. Merger history, it doesn't let me click. And this is important. This is important because it appears to me that this Van Zandt Inc., the one in California, the one that says Blake Reynolds on it, it has assumed a different name in its history and has done business as a different name, company Response Makers. Now that one, it appears, has done business under another name, Response Makers. But then there's also a Response Makers LLC, and that's associated with the Eric Rothschild, aka Rothschild. Now, I think that's important because Van Zandt Inc., doing business as Response Makers, was subpoenaed by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, back in 2014, and a business of the same name was subpoenaed in 2010 in association with a different FTC investigation having to do with deceptive or unfair business practices. So, I would like to get into all that. But one thing I can show you while staying still on this page is this right here. This is the reason why I think maybe, even though this doesn't appear to be the same company as the one that everybody's showing the Blake Reynolds filing for, and this doesn't say anything about Blake Reynolds on this page at all, or Ryan, it does give you the name for the agent for service of process, which means if this company were to get sued or need to have documents, legal documents served upon it, subpoenas or anything like that, then it would go to these people. Who? Care of who? ML Management Associates. Okay. So that doesn't say Blake Lively. That doesn't say Blake Reynolds. That does not say Ryan Reynolds. It says ML Management Associates. So if you want to sue Van Zandt in New York, the New York corporation with the New York City principal place of business, then you need to send that lawsuit over here to ML Management Associates. Who is ML Management Associates? You might be wondering. Well, I could do a whole deep dive episode on that, but suffice it to say, I have put the high points right here on the web, but we do get this 2022 Hollywood Top Business Managers of 2022 article in the Hollywood Reporter. We've seen Lou Taylor out and about around these, and in it, it says that ML Management reps such A-list talent as James Cameron, that's the guy from Titanic, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot. Also has a strong hold in the comedy scene with Chris Rock, Tina Fey, and Jason Sudeikis. I don't know how to say his name. Mark Landisman sees growth opportunities in podcasting. This is from 2022. He sees growth opportunities in podcasting, in particular for comedians, some of whom had to be off the road for the past few years. It's the Wild West where everyone's doing podcasting now. Meanwhile, Mooney, the other partner, notes it's easier than ever to get branding opportunities separate from their regular work and entertainment. Okay, so this company right here, which according to this Hollywood Reporter article represents Ryan Reynolds, this firm, which is a New York-based business management firm with a satellite office in Los Angeles, California, launched in 1988 by Mark Landisman, MLM, specializes in business management. and accounting services. So this appears to be like a Lou Taylor TriStar Sports and Entertainment type of company, type of business where they manage your business, they manage your accounting, and they go into the Hollywood Reporter. Okay. So this company right here, this is who's actually listed on the plaintiff's agent for service of process, from what I was able to see based on the public records that I just showed y'all. So it's possible the company is related to Ryan Reynolds. If Ryan Reynolds is still represented by this business management firm, if Blake is represented by this business management firm. I mean, we do have, it is obvious there is another company in California with the same exact name that does have Blake Reynolds. It's that is clearly and obviously the California company, clearly and obviously is affiliated and associated with somebody named Blake Reynolds, who appears to be the Blake Lively. But do you see how it isn't a New York corporation with a principal place of business in New York? Those Blake Reynolds filings are California filings, and it isn't the same. Like, okay, so there is a Delaware company, and there is a branch of the Delaware company, and that branch is the California one. So the Delaware company incorporates in California as a foreign entity. It's still a Delaware company, but it has a branch in California because it needs to do business there. There is another company over there, started in 2019. Over there. That's the one that is the New York corporation with a New York principal place of business. That one is not the same company. That is not a branch. That does not appear to me, based on what I just showed y'all, to be a satellite or a branch of that same company. It appears to be a completely different company. But the first one we were just talking about, with the Delaware company with the branch over there in California, that company appears to be this, Response Makers, with this Eric Rothschild character. There's a 2014 FTC action, a motion to compel. Look at this. Motion to compel Van Zandt Incorporated, doing business as Response Makers, to comply with subpoena. It was a class action lawsuit actually against Equifax back in like 2010, 2014 time period, because they were selling like lists of user data and they were not for permitted purposes. So there was a civil class action, but there also was a Federal Trade Commission investigation into this and also into the company that was called Response Makers LLC. But this is interesting to me because it says Van Zandt Incorporated is doing business as Response Makers. They were being subpoenaed in this investigation. Move to compel non-party Van Zandt Incorporated to comply with the subpoena. It's for a class action pending in Georgia, brought on behalf of consumers who received purported offers of credit. Direct lending is who was getting looked into, but in the course of investigating that for the lawsuit, the plaintiffs subpoena Van Zandt Company, aka Response Makers. Now, why do I care about Response Makers and all this? Well, because that appears to be the company that had Blake Lively's Blake Reynolds name on it. This appears to be this company. But there's also, it's confusing because there's also like an actual Response Makers LLC, and that one's been open for longer than all of them. This is the Response Makers LLC Secretary of State filing in Delaware. I don't know, y'all. I mean, I found a bunch of other stuff. This video is already so long. I probably could make 2 more videos this long just on that little cluster of things right there. But I mean, zooming out at the bigger picture, it absolutely appears as though the lawsuit for the Van Zandt versus all these Jane Does, John Does was a pretext in order to get the identity of fishing expedition, is what it looks like to me. Now, the two sides disagree. Blake Lively and them side is saying this is perfectly normal behaviors that people do all the time. Well, yeah, we did it to get the identities of who was doing what they were doing because we wanted to sue them, and that's what people do. And yes, that's what we did. Now, the other side is saying that's absolutely preposterous. Stephanie Jones, first of all, should have said no. And at the very least, she should have noticed. She should have given notice under her contractual obligations to Justin Baldoni and them that she had turned this stuff over. I mean, there's all kinds of, things flying back and forth. I mean, some people are calling this a sham, a scheme, improper, unethical scheme. They got lawyers out here saying that. Okay, so maybe it is. But to me, it appears as though it's not 100% foolproof that this plaintiff is exactly the same one that Blake Lively is the CEO of, the Van Zandt Company. But it does bring forth some interesting questions, like, even if it isn't, who is? It might be Blake. All the speculation going around may be true because, like I said, the big saving grace, I think the big help is that Blake Lively's attorney, Ezra Hudson, is accredited with saying to the Daily Mail that yes, they did file this lawsuit. And yes, it was for the purpose of getting information of who is who so that we could sue them. So maybe that's what's going on. But I think it's interesting that the agent for service of process is this ML management company. And I just feel like they may have a lot more to do with this whole thing than maybe we've been aware of. And also wanted to bring forth to y'all's attention this stuff with the FTC investigation. It is a little bit of a half-baked investigation. I just wanted to bring it forward to y'all right now. I'm not sure, like I said earlier, if this is exactly the same company. It doesn't appear that the New York plaintiff that sued is the one from California. So the holding up the California papers to show that Blake Lively is associated with Van Zandt, I don't think is foolproof. I do think it's strong evidence. I do think it's strong. I do think it's strong evidence. I'm just trying to show y'all one little possible way that like they could get you on a well technically. And maybe it's all good. Hopefully it is. And then maybe, put in the chat below if I should do, and in the comments below, if y'all want me to do a deeper investigation into the Eric Rothschild rabbit hole side of things, because he's the one that's on the papers as the CEO of Van Zandt in the California company that now Blake Reynolds' name is actually on. So sorry if that was confusing. It all makes sense in my mind. It's just kind of hard to put it out in a way that is clear, concise, and not confusing. That's one of the great limitations of humankind and civilization as a whole, is putting what's going on in here out here without getting put into a conservatorship or jail. Think on that. You'll realize it is profound. That's all I really have for today. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye.